Brilliant. What a weekend of football we have in store for you. And before Ross Casey gives us his betting views on the events all the way through a fantastic 48 hours, just a reminder for you, 10 Football League tips online now. Team in scintillating form. I'm not even going to touch him in case I get second degree burns. Let's start where we need to start. Let's start at Crystal Palace versus West Bromwich Albion. It's 7th versus 15th. And certain teams seem to just do better away from home. It suits their style. Yep. And I think that's embedded in the fact that Palace have only scored 3 goals at Selhurst Park this season.
Yeah, they are far better away from home with the likes of Yannick Bolasie, Wilfried Zaha, all suiting their counter-attacking style of play. But I do think that they can go for the jugular here against a West Brom team who absolutely capitulated against Everton on Monday due to their defensive injuries, and that could still be a problem for West Brom. The likes of Johnny Evans struggling with injury, that's going to be a massive loss for West Brom. And I think that if Crystal Palace are clever here, then they're going to go for the jugular early on, because we all know that West Brom's game plan under Pulis is to keep clean sheets. Yeah. They've kept 14 clean sheets under Tony Pulis, which is an absolutely incredible feat. And if they can get the early goal, then that takes the game plan out of West Brom. And I'm not sure that West Brom have a plan B, which is a big problem for them. Palace this season have never been losing at half-time. They're always in the game. So I think that backing them to be winning at half-time at 8-5 is a pretty decent bet. So that's basically me saying that they should go for the jugular from the start, try and get the early goal, ruin the West Brom game plan. And even though they've only scored 3 home goals, I think with the likes of Johan Kabay in midfield, they've got plenty of options to get those goals. And I think that is the best way to beat a West Brom side. So 8-5 to beat winning early doors at half-time is my best bet there.
Another odds against suggestion for Rossi, Johan Kabay, beginning to pull the strings for Crystal Palace. Don't forget, of course, this weekend, massive weekend of horse racing. Angus Loughran with his definitive tips on every Channel 4 race. And of course, I'll give you my views on the big handicaps and indeed the Arc de Triomphe, which is on Sunday. And it's exclusive, of course, here on easyodds.com. You will not get my preview anywhere else. Okay, let's move on to Chelsea versus Southampton. And who thought I'd be saying this? It's ridiculous. It's 14th at home to 10th. Yes, 14th at home to 10th. And if you have a look, actually, what is interesting, Ross, and we have a look at the research and we try and think left to centre, but Southampton on the road, Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, they've only combined for 7 goals between them.
Yeah.
Which is unthinkable when you think of, if you sort of rate the top 5 or 6 offensive teams from last season, they would be in there, wouldn't they?
They would, yeah. Which is kind of a trend that I'm going to try and break, actually, for my best tip. Well,
okay.
I'm going to try and go with Chelsea to win and both teams to score at 14-5. I think that's a pretty decent price. Everyone's saying that the big reason for Chelsea not being backed here is that they haven't got Diego Costa and who will score the goals.
Of course. But
the fact remains that every time that Diego Costa has missed a Premier League game, that's 13 in total now, Chelsea haven't actually lost a game yet.
Really?
So do they
Good stats.
So do they miss Costa? Possibly not. Who will step in and score the goal as well? I actually quite like Willian at 4-1.
He's playing well, isn't he?
He's playing well.
Yeah,
He's
really
scored
well.
3 goals in his last 3 games. He's the one player in that side who seems to be playing to his maximum at the moment, and that's pretty key. But let's go back to my actual pick of my main bet here, which is 14-5, Chelsea to win and both teams to score. Both teams have scored in this fixture in 8 of the last 9 times that these teams have met. Chelsea have only kept 1 clean sheet this season, and that was against 9-man Arsenal, so you can't really count that as a true to form thing. So I think backing Southampton to at least score a goal here is pretty decent. They've scored 14 goals in the last 5 games. That's a huge amount of firepower. I really like Sadio Mane. I think he's a very good player. I think he may well be the Southampton player that gets the goal, but that's the reason that I'm backing this. But I don't think Southampton can win the game. I can certainly see them scoring up against this Chelsea team that seems to love letting in goals at the moment, but I don't think that they'll win the game. They've only won once in their last 13 visits to Stamford Bridge, and Jose Mourinho has never lost to Southampton, so those are reasons not to back Southampton. And I'm sat here yet again backing Chelsea, and I could get hit in the bum yet again, but I am going to back them to win, but with the preface that both teams score. So that's 14-5, which is a pretty decent price, I think.
So if he doesn't get hit in the bum. That's Chelsea versus Southampton, another odds against tip. And the great thing is when you go on the Easy Odds site, and you'll know after watching this video cast that there are so many markets per game in the Premier League, but they are updated right up until the off, and indeed a lot of them are in running as well. So do check the Easy Odds website, literally up until the time of the kick-off for each of the 4 games that we're going to look at, and even the ones we don't look at as well. Small matter of a Merseyside derby on Sunday. This time it's at Goodison Park, 5th versus 9th. I relish saying that, so I'll say it again. Everton in 5th against Liverpool in 9th. But Rossi, we had to talk about this before we came on air, that Everton's recent performances in the derby have been nothing short of diabolical. Yeah, it's been such a one-sided derby, unfortunately for Everton fans. Time after time, Everton failed to win this game. They've only won... They've actually failed to win each of their last 10 derby matches against Liverpool, and that's the exact reason that I'm going to back Liverpool in the draw no bet market, which of course means that you will get your stake back for a draw. So that's a pretty good safety net there. Yes, Liverpool are struggling to win games, but they're also a side that are pretty hard to beat. If you think back to the start of the season, they actually kept 3 clean sheets back to back, and unfortunately for Liverpool fans, that seems to have gone out the window a little bit. But they are still a hard team to beat. I actually do credit Brendan Rodgers with signing a lot of players that are hard-working players, and away from home, I think Liverpool are even harder to beat now because you've got the likes of Milner and Ings, players that just try really, really hard. They put in a lot of effort, they cover a lot of ground, and that makes it hard to beat, especially away from home, because if you're being pressed, then that means that the fans then get on the back when you can't get that first goal. So I think purely based on the history here, and Everton seem to have an inferiority complex against Liverpool. I don't know why, especially this current Liverpool side. But I do think that backing Liverpool in the draw no bet market, 26-25 is a decent bet. You can't keep backing Stephen Naismith to come off the bench and score a hat-trick. Well, you can, but you not make a profit every time.
You also have to take into consideration, sorry Paul to cut you off there, the injuries to Stones and Coleman. That could be key, and also the fact that huge transfer Christian Benteke is actually out actually suits Liverpool, because he is a great Premier League striker, but he just doesn't suit a Brendan Rodgers team, and Daniel Sturridge, who is back now, certainly does, and that makes Liverpool, who of course rested him in midweek, a far more dangerous prospect moving forward. Coutinho was also rested in that game. He only played about half an hour against Sion in midweek, and I think that with those 2 players fit, they have every chance of getting at least a point at Goodison Park.
Well, I think that Jags will have Sturridge in his pocket, but we'll find out on Sunday, and that's another odds against tip for Rossi here on easyodds.com, which means we come to the final game of the weekend, live game on TV, and we're going to go to Arsenal versus Man U. And this sounds a little bit more like it, doesn't it? 4th against first, but Arsenal, they just can't score at the Emirates. Do you know how many goals they scored at the Emirates this season? In a league game?
I believe 2.
Correct?
Yeah.
2. That's all they scored. I mean, it's amazing when you think about their firepower.
Yeah.
But they're obviously suffering from a lack of confidence, and probably even more so after that amazing result in midweek in the Champions League.
Yeah, they're going to be absolutely desperate to fix what went wrong in the Champions League, where they're on 0 points after 2 games, which is just unthinkable, considering that their next 2 games are against Bayern Munich, which it could be a case after 4 games where they're going to be on 0 points, which is just
hilarious.
It's pretty funny if you're a Tottenham fan, I'm sure. But let's move on to this game, and they're going to be desperate to fix that, of course. But the last team that they want to face is a Man United side that are top of the league, and historically are just very, very good against Arsenal. Arsenal have only won 1 of the last 13 Premier League fixtures against Man United, which I was amazed at, to be honest. Man United have also not lost in any of the last 4 visits to the Emirates. It seems to be that since they moved from Highbury, Man United have seemed to have got a better record. Playing in the bigger stadium seems to suit Man United. So, and Arsenal have the lowest win percentage against any team in the Premier League history, and that's against Man United, 24%. So those stats alone would scare Arsenal fans. But if you add into that the fact that Arsenal have only won one match at home this season, only scored 2 goals this season, I think the offer here of 177 to 100, so that's better odds than the Liverpool tip in the same market, draw no bet, is a very good value. I actually would argue that it should be the other way round.
Would that be almost like, if you think it's better value, it's almost like your bet of the day, isn't it? Or the bet of the weekend.
I would offer that, yeah. Man United are on a 5-match winning streak. They've got Martial, who has completely turned around their style of play. He's the one player now, and either side of him he's got Memphis, who's a similar kind of player.
And speed hurts, doesn't it?
So absolutely. And they've shown in the past how counter-attacking at the Emirates can hurt Arsenal, and as Arsenal have shown this season, Arsenal just seem to not learn from their mistakes. So I can see that happening yet again, of Arsenal playing the way that they always play, but then being able to be caught on the break, just like West Ham did to them on their opening day.
When was the last time you came on this video cast and we had 4 odds against tips? It's really interesting when you tend to do a football bet, if you have 3 or 4 in a multiple or an acca, you normally sort of put one sort of banker in at a shade of odds on, but you can go odds against on all 4, and then if the first 3 come up in time order and then you want to save on the Man United Arsenal game, you can then back in another market and give yourself a second chance. That's the way it is. Rossi, what are you doing this weekend?
What am I doing this weekend? I'm going to have a pretty brilliant football weekend with these matches on the fixture list. It sounds to me like I should just be sat on the sofa watching these.
That's what I'm going to do as well. Whatever you're doing, have a solid punting weekend, be safe and be sound, and don't forget, of course, to check the easyodds.com website as you go through the weekend.